Do you ever think about the day everything changes? Max Sullivan stood at the door, his hand gripping the handle, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear Olivia's voice, her laughter filling the house as she spoke to her friends. But then, the words hit him like a slap to the face. Honestly, this marriage has a year left. Max, I wish you'd just disappear forever. Max froze. His body stiffened, every muscle tensed as the reality of her words sank in. It wasn't just a comment. It was a declaration, a dismissal. The woman he had loved, the woman he had built his life around, had just said she wished he were gone. The laughter from the room faded, but the sting of Olivia's words remained. He didn't know what to feel at first. Rage? Hurt? Disbelief? But he knew one thing for sure. This was the moment. This was the moment everything changed. The man he used to be, the man who had sacrificed so much for this marriage, was gone. Max didn't scream. He didn't storm into the room demanding answers. He just turned, slowly, his eyes fixed on the ground. There was no need to argue, no need to fight. The damage had been done. He walked out quietly, not a word spoken, not a glance thrown back. The world outside was cold, and as he stepped into the night, it felt strangely liberating. He didn't know where he was going. All he knew was that he couldn't stay here, not in this house where his presence was a burden. Olivia didn't know it yet, but the man she thought she had broken was about to make her regret every word. Max wasn't just going to disappear. He was going to rebuild himself. Stronger, smarter. A man who didn't need her. A man who had everything he needed to succeed without her. As the city lights flickered in the distance, Max's mind raced. He had always been the quiet one, the one who let things slide, the one who made sacrifices. But now, the rules had changed. He wasn't going to be the man who let Olivia's words define him anymore. He was going to make her regret ever saying them. Max wasn't just walking away. He was walking toward something new, something better. And Olivia? She wouldn't even see it coming. The game had just begun. Max Sullivan's footsteps echoed in the empty streets as he walked away from the house, the door quietly closing behind him. The night air was cool against his skin, but inside, a storm was brewing. He had always been the quiet one, the dependable one. But tonight, everything had changed. Max didn't know where he was going, but he didn't care. It was the first time in years that he felt a sense of freedom, even if it was terrifying. He had been a husband, a provider, a man who thought his life was set. But now he was a man on a mission. Olivia's words were still ringing in his ears, but they weren't hurting him anymore. They were pushing him. He was done being the man who stood silently in the background while everyone else got what they wanted. The old Max was gone, and the new one was just beginning to take shape. The first few days were a blur. Max stayed in a small motel outside of town, just far enough to not have to look back. It was the kind of place that smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and bleach, but it was a place where he could think. He spent his mornings going through old files, making calls, reaching out to people he hadn't spoken to in years. He was slowly, quietly, building something. Olivia had no idea what was happening. She still thought he was the same man who would come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. But Max wasn't going back. He was moving forward. The silence of the motel room became his refuge. He could feel the weight of his past life slipping away, each hour more liberating than the last. Max started hitting the gym again, something he hadn't done in years. He got back to doing the things he loved, reading, working on his car, and reconnecting with old friends. It was amazing how much time he had when he wasn't catering to Olivia's every whim. He felt stronger, more focused. The changes weren't just physical. His mind was sharper, more determined. Max wasn't just rebuilding his life. He was building a new one. He wasn't doing it for Olivia or anyone else. He was doing it for himself. And when the time came, he would show her just how wrong she was about him. Olivia thought she had won, thought she had pushed him to the edge. But Max was about to show her that the edge was where he thrived. The days passed quickly, each one bringing him closer to the man he wanted to become. He had a plan now, something that would shake Olivia to her core. It wasn't about revenge. It was about proving to himself that he was worth more than the way she had treated him. Max Sullivan was done being invisible. He was done being a footnote in his own life. And when he returned, it wouldn't be as the man she thought she had discarded. It would be as the man who had finally found his strength. Olivia wouldn't know what hit her. Max sat in his small, quiet apartment, the city lights casting shadows on the walls as he stared at his phone. He had spent the past few weeks rebuilding his life, making connections he had long ignored, and focusing on himself in a way he had never allowed before. His body was stronger now, his mind clearer. He had everything he needed to move forward, to take back control of his life. The only thing left was to confront Olivia, to show her that she had underestimated him. The plan had been simple, but effective. Max knew she would never expect it. He had already made the first move by contacting an old lawyer friend, someone he trusted to help him through this process. The legal battle would be long, but it didn't matter. Max was ready. The thought of Olivia, still living her life, thinking he was broken, was what kept him going. He could already picture her face when she realized the truth. It would be the look of shock, of regret. She had always been in control, manipulating him, making him feel small. But now, he was the one in control. Max had seen the signs long before the betrayal. He had always known there was something wrong, but he ignored it. He thought he could fix things, that things would get better if he just worked harder, loved her more. But now he knew the truth. Olivia had never really cared. He wasn't just a partner in her eyes. He was a convenience. And he wasn't going to let that define him any longer. The first step in. His plan was the business trip. Olivia had planned a big event, something she thought was important, something she thought would keep her distracted. But it wasn't about the event. It was about the timing. Max had already arranged everything. He wasn't going to just show up unannounced. He would wait until the right moment. He wasn't going to let her see him coming. When Olivia left for her event, Max made his move. He spent the day meeting with contacts, making sure everything was set in motion. The surprise was coming, and he couldn't wait to see her reaction. He had become someone completely different than the man she had once known. A man who didn't need her approval. A man who was strong on his own. As the day wore on, Max could feel the anticipation building. He was ready. When the moment came, he would step into her life again, but this time it would be on his terms. And when Olivia saw him again, she would know that she had lost the power she once had over him. The game had changed, and this time, Max would be the one to win. Max stood in front of the hotel, the cold wind biting at his skin as he adjusted his jacket. It had been a long time since he felt this way. Focused, sharp, with a sense of purpose that he hadn't known he was missing. Olivia had no idea what was coming. She was still out there, playing her game, pretending everything was normal, but Max knew the truth. The wheels had already been set in motion. Everything had been planned down to the smallest detail, and now, it was time to execute the final move. He walked inside, past the elegant lobby, through the glass doors leading to the ballroom. The event was in full swing. Olivia, as always, was at the center of attention, laughing with colleagues, mingling with influential guests. To the outside world, it was a picture of success. But Max wasn't here to watch the show. He was here to disrupt it. He scanned the room, his eyes locking onto Olivia. She was talking to a group of executives, her posture perfect, her smile flawless, but Max could see it, the emptiness behind her eyes. She had always worn that smile like armor, hiding the truth from everyone around her. But now Max could see through it. He wasn't the man she had left behind. He wasn't the man she had dismissed as weak. And tonight, she would see that. As he walked across the room, he felt a strange calmness wash over him. This was his moment. The moment where everything he had worked for, the time he spent rebuilding his life, the strength he had found within himself, would pay off. Olivia would finally realize what she had lost. Max approached her, his steps measured and confident. As he reached her side, she turned, her face lighting up with surprise. She hadn't expected him to show up. "Max," she said, her voice catching slightly. "What are you doing here?" Max didn't respond with anger or bitterness. Instead, he gave her a small, controlled smile. "I came to see how things were going," he said calmly. Olivia looked around, clearly uncomfortable. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, her eyes flicking nervously to the crowd. "This isn't the right time." Max didn't move. "Actually, Olivia," he replied, his voice steady. "I think it's the perfect time." He could see the panic in her eyes, the realization hitting her. She knew, deep down, that things had changed. Max wasn't the man she had walked away from. He was someone stronger, someone who had learned to live without her. And now, the tables were turning. Max didn't need to say more. He just stood there, watching as Olivia's facade began to crumble. The mask she had carefully crafted over the years was slipping away. The power she had over him, the control she had taken for granted, was fading. In that moment, Max felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. For the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he needed to be. And Olivia? She was about to find out just how wrong she was about him. Max watched as Olivia's eyes shifted uneasily, the mask she wore beginning to crack. For the first time, she seemed unsure, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. He stood there, the quiet confidence in his posture reflecting the changes he had made in his life. Olivia opened her mouth, probably to say something, but no words came out. Her social facade faltered. Max could feel the power shift in the room. He wasn't here to plead or beg. He wasn't the man who would crawl back, chasing after her approval. Olivia had always been in control, but now, the tables had turned. He could see the realization in her eyes, that she had misjudged him. She had thought he was weak, that he was nothing without her. But tonight, Max was standing tall, a man who had rebuilt himself. "What's going on, Max?" Olivia finally managed to speak, her voice shaky. Max took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. "You don't get to decide when I disappear," he said softly. "I'm here because I chose to be." The room felt colder now, the atmosphere thick with the tension between them. Olivia looked around, clearly uncomfortable, trying to maintain her composure in front of her colleagues. But the control she had once held over Max was slipping away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "I think it's time for you to leave," Olivia said, her voice colder now, but Max could see the nervousness hidden behind her words. He didn't move. "I don't think so, Olivia," he replied calmly. "You see, this is where things have changed. You thought I would just walk away, that I would let you keep running things. But I'm not the man I was before." Max's words landed heavy in the air, and Olivia's eyes widened slightly. He could see the discomfort growing in her, the realization that the power dynamic had shifted. Max wasn't the one scrambling anymore. "You didn't think I could do it, did you?" Max continued. "You didn't think I could find my own path. You thought I was just going to stay here, waiting for you to toss me scraps of attention." Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was caught, trapped in the moment. Max could feel her fear building, the vulnerability she had hidden for so long beginning to surface. "I've moved on, Olivia. I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to beg for you to love me. I'm here because I wanted you to see who I really am. The man you thought was weak, he's gone." He took a step back, his eyes never leaving hers. The silence in the room stretched on, thick and suffocating, as Olivia stood there, speechless. Max wasn't angry. He wasn't upset. He was calm, collected. It was a power he hadn't known he had until now. Olivia had no idea what to say, no words that could reverse the truth that Max had just delivered. He wasn't the man she thought he was. And as he turned to leave, he knew that when she finally understood the gravity of her mistake, it would be too late. Max stepped out of the hotel, the cool night air brushing against his face as he walked through the streets, his thoughts clear and steady. He hadn't felt this way in years, strong, self-assured, and in control. Olivia's reaction had been exactly what he expected. The moment he left the ballroom, he knew things had changed for good. He didn't need her approval, not anymore. The world around him seemed different now. Every step he took, every move he made, he was no longer the man trapped by the past. He was free. But this wasn't just about freedom. It was about closure. Max had always been the one to sacrifice, to give everything for those he loved. But now, he understood something deeper. Love wasn't supposed to make you lose yourself. It was supposed to build you up. And Olivia had never built him up. She had torn him down, little by little, until he barely recognized himself. As Max made his way back to his apartment, he took a moment to appreciate how far he had come. The work, the long hours, the sacrifices, all of it had led to this point. And now, he was standing at the edge of something new. He wasn't going to go back to the man he was. He was going to create a new version of himself, one that didn't depend on anyone's approval. The next few weeks were a blur. Max dove into his work, reconnecting with old business contacts, making deals that would propel him forward. He didn't waste time thinking about Olivia. She wasn't a part of his life anymore. The more he focused on building his own empire, the clearer it became that he didn't need her. She had wanted him to disappear, to vanish, and he had done that. But now, he was reappearing as someone new. One day, as he sat at his desk, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk." I know you're busy, but I can't keep pretending. Max frowned, recognizing Olivia's name on the screen. He stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without a second thought. She had no right to reach out to him now. He had given her everything, and she had thrown it away. Max had no more time for her games. She had made her choices, and now it was his turn. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than any words could. Olivia wasn't the one who controlled his life anymore. Max had taken the reins back. He didn't care if she was trying to fix things now. It was too late. The next few months passed quickly. Max continued to build his new life, focusing on the future. Olivia had tried to reach out a few more times, but each time, Max ignored her. He was moving forward, and nothing was going to stop him. He had been knocked down, but now he was standing taller than ever before. And Olivia? She would have to live with the fact that she had let the best thing in her life slip through her fingers. Max wasn't going to waste another minute on the past. He had bigger things to focus on now, things that didn't involve her. Max had finally reached a point where everything seemed to click into place. The past months had been a whirlwind of self-discovery and relentless progress, and he had never felt more in control of his life. As he stood at his office window, looking out over the skyline of the city, he realized that he had built something solid, something real. The past had no hold over him anymore. He wasn't that man who had been dismissed, the one who had been tossed aside without a second thought. He was someone new, someone who had taken the hardest hit and come back stronger. The phone buzzed on his desk, and Max glanced at it. It was an email, one he hadn't expected. Max, we need to talk. This isn't easy for me. Please meet me. It was from Olivia. A wave of indifference washed over him. He had moved on. He didn't need closure from her, didn't need her validation anymore. But a part of him knew that this message, this last attempt, was more about her than about him. Olivia had always been the one in control, but now she was reaching out. Max wasn't angry, not anymore. He had spent so much time wondering what went wrong, questioning his own worth, but now, the answer was clear. He didn't need her approval to be happy or successful. The realization that he was enough, without her, was the most freeing feeling he had ever experienced. Olivia's words, once sharp and cutting, no longer carried weight. He wasn't waiting for her to fix things, to make amends. The closure he needed had already been found. It was in his own growth, in his ability to walk away and thrive. Still, Max couldn't deny the temptation to see what Olivia had to say. Curiosity got the better of him, and he agreed to meet her, just to hear her out. He chose a quiet cafe downtown, a place away from the noise and the distractions of their old life. When Olivia walked in, he could see the difference. She wasn't the confident, in-control woman she used to be. Her eyes were tired, her posture more slouched. Max had changed, but so had she. Max, I'm sorry. Olivia began, her voice shaky. I know I hurt you, and I never should have treated you the way I did. I took you for granted. I thought you'd always be there. Max listened, his face neutral, his heart calm. She had always been good with words, but Max had learned to listen to actions, not just promises. I know this doesn't make up for anything, she continued. But I've changed. I've realized that you were always more than I gave you credit for. Max didn't respond immediately. He took a moment to think about how far he had come, how much he had grown. Olivia's words were just that, words. Action spoke louder. And in the end, it was his own actions, his own choices, that had defined his journey. Olivia, Max said finally, his voice steady. I appreciate you reaching out, but I don't need your apology. I've already forgiven you. The person I was before, the man who needed you, is gone. I've moved on, and I'm better for it. Olivia's face fell. She had expected him to react differently, maybe to soften, to give her another chance. But Max wasn't that man anymore. He had his own path, one that didn't involve her. The silence between them was thick, and as Max stood to leave, he realized that the final chapter had been written. He wasn't looking back anymore. He had closed that door. The future was waiting for him, and he was ready to walk through it, alone, but stronger than ever. Max had been living in his newfound peace for months, slowly cementing the life he had created for himself. His days were filled with purpose, his mind sharp, and his body stronger than it had ever been. He spent less time reflecting on the past, and more time focusing on building the future he wanted. Business was booming, and he had reconnected with old friends who appreciated him for who he had always been. Not the man Olivia tried to define him as, but the person he had become through his own strength and resilience. Then, one day, as Max was walking to his office, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Max?" came a familiar voice. It was Olivia. The calmness in her voice was unsettling. "I've been thinking about everything, and I need to apologize. I've made a lot of mistakes. Can we talk?" Max paused, his fingers tightening around the phone. For a moment, he thought about ignoring it. But curiosity, more than anything, led him to reply. "What is it, Olivia?" he asked, his tone steady. I don't want to leave things this way. I want to explain myself. I need you to understand why I did what I did," she said, her voice faltering. Max wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. He was, for the first time, indifferent. He had already made peace with the past. "Olivia, we've been through this. You don't need to explain anything. I've heard it all before," he replied. "But Max," she said, her voice shaking now, "I thought I could change things. I thought I could fix everything. But I see now that I've ruined everything. I've lost you, and it's my fault." Max leaned against the wall outside his office building, the sun shining down on him. He thought about the person he used to be, the man who would have tried to fix things, who would have believed her words. But that person was gone. He wasn't that man anymore. "Olivia," Max said, his voice soft but firm, "I've moved on. I've built a life without you, and I'm not looking back. I've forgiven you, but I don't need anything from you anymore." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Max could feel the weight of her regret through the phone, but it didn't change anything. The truth was, he didn't need her validation, her apology, or her approval. He was enough on his own. After a few moments, Olivia spoke again, this time with a resigned sigh. "I understand," she said quietly. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I hope one day you'll be able to forgive me fully." Max stood up straight, his mind made up. "I have forgiven you, Olivia. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. I've already moved forward, and I'm not looking back anymore." He hung up the phone and stood there for a moment, looking at the world around him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. He was free. The life he had now, the man he had become, was the result of everything he had been through. Olivia's words no longer had any power over him. He had learned to define himself, not by others, but by his own actions. He had taken control of his life. And nothing, not even Olivia's apology, could change that. The silence that followed felt peaceful. It was a peace he had fought for and earned. And for the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Max sat at his desk, staring at the reflection in the window as the city bustled outside. He had come a long way from the man who once begged for validation, who once thought his worth was tied to someone else's opinion. Now his life was his own. He had built it from the ground up, brick by brick, without anyone's help. The silence in the room was comforting, a reminder of how far he had come. Olivia's calls had stopped. The apologies, the regrets, they no longer reached him. He didn't need them. He didn't need her. He had everything he needed right here. The company he had worked tirelessly to build, the friends who valued him for who he was, and the future he had only begun to create. Max took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a rare moment of peace. He had worked hard for this. The pain, the heartbreak, the struggle, it had all led him to this point. He had learned that success, happiness, and fulfillment didn't come from external validation or approval. They came from within. Max had taken control of his own life, and now he was in charge of his own happiness. As the weeks passed, Max continued to build. His business grew, and so did his sense of self. He had no need for the toxic relationships of his past. He didn't miss Olivia. He didn't miss the woman who had once held so much power over him. He had learned that he was enough without her, that he was worthy of all the good things that came his way. And when he looked back on the years he had spent with Olivia, he didn't feel anger anymore. He didn't feel resentment. He felt gratitude, because it was through the pain of that relationship that he had found himself. Max didn't regret the past. He didn't regret the mistakes or the lessons learned along the way. He knew now that those mistakes were a part of his growth, a part of the journey that had led him to this moment. He was stronger, smarter, and more self-aware than he had ever been. And that was all that mattered. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message. He glanced at the screen, but it was just a reminder for a meeting later that day. Nothing more. He smiled to himself. Life was good. He had made it. Max was finally free. Free from the weight of the past. Free from the shackles of someone else's expectations. He was in control, and he knew now that nothing could take that away from him. As the sun set outside his window, Max knew that this was just the beginning. The future was bright, and it was his to create.